A warm Sunday afternoon in Riverside Park. Birds chirping. Children laughing. The perfect picture of suburban tranquility. For 27-year-old Jasmine Carter, it should have been just another peaceful lunch break, a chance to clear her head and enjoy the sunshine after a grueling week. But when a self-appointed neighborhood watchdog named Carol Henderson decided that Jasmine, a young black woman sitting alone on a park bench, looked suspicious, that peaceful afternoon turned into a nightmare of accusations, police confrontation, and ultimately, a courtroom battle that would expose the ugly face of everyday racism. What Carol Henderson didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that the quiet, composed woman she was harassing had a secret. Jasmine Carter wasn't just another park visitor. She was a covert intelligence analyst for the Central Intelligence Agency, and when Carol pushed her into a corner, Jasmine would be forced to reveal the one thing she'd spent years keeping hidden. This is the story of how prejudice collided with power, how a badge revealed in a courtroom silenced an accuser, and how one woman's fight for dignity became a lesson in the consequences of unchecked bias. Riverside Park sat on the edge of a quiet Atlanta suburb, a carefully manicured green space with walking trails, a children's playground, and rows of benches shaded by oak trees. It was the kind of place where dog walkers nodded politely to joggers, where families spread blankets for picnics, and where the biggest concern was usually whether you remembered to bring sunscreen. Jasmine Carter had discovered the park 3 months ago, shortly after relocating to Atlanta for work. Officially, she was employed as a policy analyst for a government contractor. Unofficially, she was a covert intelligence analyst for the CIA's Atlanta field office, specializing in domestic counterterrorism threats. On this particular Sunday, Jasmine sat on her favorite bench near the pond, a brown paper bag containing a turkey sandwich and an apple resting beside her. She wore casual clothes, jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and a light cardigan. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like any other young professional enjoying a day off. She'd brought a book, a thriller novel she'd been meaning to finish for weeks, but found herself more interested in people watching. A father pushed his daughter on the swings. An elderly couple walked hand in hand along the path. A group of teenagers played frisbee on the grass. For a moment, Jasmine felt at peace. The stress of her work, the classified reports, the late nights analyzing threat patterns, the weight of secrets she couldn't share, all of it faded into the background. Then she noticed the woman. She was standing about 30 feet away, near the playground, staring directly at Jasmine. The woman was in her mid-50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and the kind of designer athletic wear that screamed, "I don't actually exercise in this." Her arms were crossed, and her expression, even from a distance, was one of suspicion. Jasmine felt a familiar tightness in her chest. She'd experienced this before, the unwelcome scrutiny, the assumption that she didn't belong. She tried to ignore it, focusing back on her book. But the woman didn't look away. After several minutes of uncomfortable staring, the woman began walking toward Jasmine's bench. Her stride was purposeful, her chin lifted with an air of authority she clearly believed she possessed. Jasmine took a slow breath, reminding herself of her training. Stay calm. Don't escalate. Document everything. The woman stopped a few feet from the bench. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp and accusatory. Jasmine looked up, keeping her expression neutral. "Yes. I'm Carol Henderson. I'm on the Neighborhood Watch Committee." She gestured vaguely toward the surrounding area, as though she owned it. "I've been watching you, and I need to ask what you're doing here." Jasmine blinked. "I'm sitting on a bench. In a public park." Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. "I've never seen you here before. This is a family park. We've had issues with people loitering, and I need to make sure you have a legitimate reason to be here." Jasmine felt anger flare but forced it down. "Ma'am, this is a public space. I don't need to justify my presence to you." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Carol said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just doing my part to keep this community safe. You understand." Safe from what? Jasmine asked quietly. Carol's expression hardened. From people who don't belong. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jasmine's hands tightened around her book. She wanted to stand up, to tell this woman exactly what she thought of her thinly veiled racism. But her training kicked in. Confrontation would only escalate things. I have every right to be here, Jasmine said, her voice steady. I'm not causing any harm. I'm simply enjoying my lunch. Carol looked at Jasmine's sandwich bag with disdain. Are you homeless? Because this park has rules against camping. I'm not homeless. I live in Brookhaven. I work in the city. Doing what? Jasmine paused. She couldn't reveal her real work. Policy analysis. For a contractor. Carol's skeptical expression didn't change. Can you prove that? Excuse me. Can you show me some identification? Something that proves you're not here to cause trouble. Jasmine's patience was wearing dangerously thin. I don't have to show you anything. You're not law enforcement. Carol's face flushed red. I'm a concerned citizen. And if you refuse to cooperate, I have every right to call the police. For what? Jasmine asked, her voice rising slightly despite her best efforts. For sitting on a bench while black. Don't you dare play that card with me, Carol snapped. This has nothing to do with race. This is about safety. But they both knew that was a lie. Carol pulled out her phone. Fine. If you won't cooperate, I'll let the authorities handle this. Jasmine felt her heart pounding. She could walk away. She should walk away. But something deeper, pride, exhaustion, anger at years of this same treatment, kept her rooted to the spot. Go ahead, Jasmine said quietly. Call them. Carol's fingers flew across her phone screen, and moments later, she pressed it to her ear. Yes, I'm at Riverside Park. There's a suspicious individual here who refuses to leave. She won't provide identification and she's acting aggressively. Please send someone immediately. Jasmine's blood boiled at the lies. Acting aggressively? She'd been sitting quietly on a bench. But she stayed calm. She pulled out her own phone and discreetly started recording. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 10 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled into the park's small parking lot. 4 officers emerged, their radios crackling. Carol rushed toward them immediately, gesturing dramatically toward Jasmine. Jasmine stood slowly, keeping her hands visible. She'd been through enough training to know how quickly these situations could turn dangerous for a black woman, even one with a federal badge hidden in her wallet. The lead officer, a tall man with graying temples, approached cautiously. Ma'am, I'm Officer Davis. We received a call about a disturbance. Can you tell me what's going on? Jasmine spoke clearly and calmly. Officer, I've been sitting on that bench eating lunch. This woman approached me, demanded identification, and called you when I refused to comply with her unlawful request. Carol interjected immediately. That's not true. She was acting suspiciously. She refused to tell me why she was here. I have a right to protect this community. Officer Davis raised a hand. Ma'am, let me handle this. He turned back to Jasmine. Do you have identification? Jasmine hesitated. She could show her driver's license. But she could also show her CIA credentials. The thought crossed her mind, but she dismissed it immediately. Revealing her status publicly could compromise her cover, put ongoing operations at risk. I have a driver's license, Jasmine said. She slowly reached into her bag and produced it, handing it to Officer Davis. He examined it, then glanced at her face. Jasmine Carter. Address in Brookhaven. He handed it back. You're not doing anything illegal. This is a public park. Carol's face went red. But she was. Ma'am, Officer Davis said firmly, unless she's violated a law, we don't have grounds to remove her. A second officer, younger and clearly less experienced, chimed in. Did she threaten you in any way? Carol hesitated, then said, she was verbally aggressive. Jasmine pulled out her phone. I recorded our entire conversation. Would you like to hear it? Carol's expression faltered. Officer Davis sighed. Miss Carter, are you willing to leave voluntarily to avoid further issues? Jasmine felt a surge of indignation. Why should I leave? I haven't done anything wrong. It would de-escalate the situation. With all due respect, officer, the situation would de-escalate if you told this woman to stop harassing me. Officer Davis looked between the two women, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, he turned to Carol. Ma'am, I think it's best if you move along. Miss Carter has every right to be here. Carol's mouth dropped open in shock. Are you serious? I'm the one who called you. And we've responded. There's no crime here. Have a good day. Carol stood frozen for a moment, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Then she turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath. Officer Davis gave Jasmine an apologetic nod. Sorry for the trouble, ma'am. As the officers left, Jasmine sank back onto the bench, her hands trembling. She'd won this round, but she had a sinking feeling Carol Henderson wasn't done. 3 weeks later, Jasmine received a certified letter at her home address. She signed for it with a growing sense of dread, ripping open the envelope as soon as the postal worker left. Inside was a legal complaint. Carol Henderson was suing her. The allegations were absurd: harassment, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Carol claimed Jasmine had publicly labeled her a racist, causing reputational harm. She demanded $250,000 in damages. Jasmine read the document twice, disbelief turning to anger. Carol had called the police on her for sitting in a park, and now she was claiming to be the victim. Jasmine immediately called her CIA supervisor, a veteran agent named Richard Cole. Richard, we have a problem, she said when he answered. She explained the situation, the park confrontation, the police, and now the lawsuit. Richard was silent for a long moment. Did you reveal your status to anyone? No. But this lawsuit could expose me. If it goes to court, my employment might come up. We'll need to file this with legal, Richard said. But Jasmine, you know the policy. We can't intervene in personal legal matters unless operational security is threatened. This is a threat to operational security. Jasmine protested. If I'm forced to testify about my job, my cover is blown. Then we advise you settle. Jasmine's jaw tightened. She called the cops on me for being black in a park. I'm not giving her a dime. Richard sighed. Then get a good lawyer. And keep us informed. Jasmine hired attorney Marcus Reynolds, a sharp civil rights lawyer recommended by a friend. Marcus listened to her story, watched the video she'd recorded, and shook his head in disgust. This is a slap suit, he said. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. She's trying to intimidate you into silence. Can we get it dismissed? Maybe. But we'll need to demonstrate her claims are baseless. Do you have witnesses? Jasmine thought back to the park. There were people around. A few might have seen the confrontation. We'll need to find them. And Jasmine. Marcus hesitated. Your employment. If this goes to trial, opposing counsel will dig into your background. Is there anything I should know? Jasmine took a breath. I work for the government. My job is classified. I can't discuss details. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Classified how? Intelligence community. CIA. Jasmine nodded. Marcus let out a low whistle. That complicates things. If you're called to testify about your employment, you'll be in a bind. But. He leaned forward, it might also be our trump card. Carol testified first, recounting her version of events with theatrical flair. She claimed Jasmine had been menacing, that she'd feared for her safety, that Jasmine had later spread lies about her online. On cross-examination, Marcus dismantled her testimony piece by piece. He played Jasmine's recording, which clearly showed Carol as the aggressor. He presented evidence that Jasmine had never posted about the incident publicly. Carol grew flustered, contradicting herself repeatedly. Then it was Jasmine's turn. Marcus led her through a calm, detailed account of what had happened. Jasmine was composed, articulate, credible. Then Preston Burke stood for cross-examination. "Miss Carter," he began with a smirk, "you claim you were just innocently sitting in the park. But you have a history of antagonistic behavior, don't you?" "I do not." "You have specialized training in confrontation, don't you?" Marcus objected. "Relevance?" Burke continued. "Miss Carter, what exactly do you do for a living?" Jasmine's pulse quickened. "I'm a policy analyst." "For whom?" "A government contractor." "Which one?" "I'm not at liberty to say." Burke's smirk widened. "How convenient. You're hiding something, aren't you?" Marcus stood. "Objection. Badgering." Judge Williams frowned. "Mr. Burke, where are you going with this?" "Your Honor, the plaintiff has a right to know if the defendant has training or background that might explain her aggressive behavior." Jasmine's heart raced. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading. Judge Williams looked at Jasmine. "Miss Carter, I'm going to allow the question. What is your actual employment?" Jasmine met the judge's eyes. Then she reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a black leather case. She stood and walked to the bench, flipping it open to reveal her CIA credentials. The courtroom went silent. Judge Williams examined the badge, her expression neutral. "Approach," she said quietly. Jasmine, Marcus, and Burke gathered at the bench. The judge spoke in a low voice. "This is legitimate?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jasmine said. "I'm a covert intelligence analyst. I wasn't at liberty to disclose this publicly." Judge Williams looked at Burke. "Mr. Burke, are you satisfied?" Burke looked like he'd been punched. Yes, Your Honor." "Then we're done here." The judge handed the credentials back to Jasmine, who returned to the stand. Carol's face was ashen. The spectators whispered among themselves. Marcus seized the moment. "Your Honor, I move to dismiss this case. It's clear Miss Henderson targeted Miss Carter without cause, and this lawsuit is retaliation for Miss Carter defending herself." Judge Williams nodded slowly. "I'm inclined to agree. Mr. Burke, unless you have significant evidence to support your client's claims, I'm going to grant the motion." Burke stammered. We need time to." "Motion granted," Judge Williams said firmly. "Case dismissed. And Miss Henderson, consider yourself fortunate I'm not sanctioning you for bringing a frivolous suit." Carol sat frozen, humiliated, as the courtroom erupted in murmurs. The story hit local news within hours. Woman sues CIA analyst she racially profiled, case dismissed. Carol Henderson became a pariah in her neighborhood. People who'd once nodded politely now crossed the street to avoid her. Jasmine, meanwhile, faced her own consequences. Her cover was blown. She had to be reassigned, moved to a desk job analyzing data rather than working in the field. But she had no regrets. A week after the trial, Jasmine returned to Riverside Park. She sat on the same bench, eating the same sandwich, reclaiming the space that had been denied to her. This time, no one bothered her. Sometimes justice arrives not with a gavel, but with a badge. Jasmine Carter's story reminds us that dignity is worth fighting for, even when the cost is high. Carol Henderson learned that prejudice has consequences. And the rest of us learned that the quiet person on the park bench might just have more power than you ever imagined. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more tales of justice served. Thank you for watching.